Phone the comment line 1850 715 900.
The country's gender pay gap of 14%, which has worsened over recent years, and the absence of women at board level will be two topics addressed at an event later today to celebrate Ireland's most powerful women. The Top 25 Awards will hear from some of Ireland's leading female business leaders, and two of those people join me now in studio. Christine Heffernan is Corporate Affairs Director with Tesco Ireland. Louise Phelan is Vice President of Global Operations for Europe and the Middle East and Africa with PayPal. Good morning to you both. Thank you for coming in. Louise, is there a difference in your view in how men and women work in business and in the business world?
Morning, Sean. Yes, I do believe personally there is. I think women have a lot of authenticity. I think women have a lot of empathy, and I think that makes them great leaders. When you talk about women's strengths, you talk about they're being helpful, they're collaborative, they're hardworking. And when you talk about men, you talk about assertive, you talk about ambitious, you talk about a number of things. But I suppose the key thing, Sean, is to have diversity of thought at the table and making decisions. And we need those to make sure we collaborate. But also, more importantly, at the table, you have to have diversity of thought to make decisions. And
Christine, to offer a generalisation, one of the things I've always admired about the women I've worked with over the years is they have a great capacity to be direct, to cut to the chase, maybe in a way that men won't. I don't know if that's a fair comment, but what do you think?
Well, I think that there are certain stereotypes in terms of men and women at work, that the women are perhaps better communicators, men maybe are better at taking charge. But actually, I think what's important is to get beyond those gender stereotypes and actually look at skill sets. And I think that's why WXN is so valuable, and that it's able to provide mentoring and support to women so that in the workplace, we're able to really draw out our key strengths and really make a difference. I'm very lucky that I work in an organisation that is very gender diverse. In Tesco Ireland, 40% of our board is female, 30% of our senior management team is female. And just to build on Louise's point, I think for businesses today, I think that that's really important. I think it leads to a more diverse culture. I think better decision making, and not just gender diversity, but cultural and age diversity as well. And I think increasingly organisations recognise that in order to be successful, they have to represent their customers in a society in which they operate.
So in regard to the skill sets, just to pick up on Christine's point, Louise, where do women need more support? Where do they need the mentoring? Because that's what people on the floor are going to be asking you, I think, later today at the forum.
I think, Sean, a number of things. I said, first of all, women need and have great support mechanisms around them now, exactly like what WXN do today around coaching, mentoring, and mainly, again, having advocates. So it's about other role model women that women can look at and say, I can do that role, or I can achieve the same as other role models. And I think that's really, really key. If you think about, in PayPal, we constantly look at diversity and we talk about inclusion. It's not just about gender. It's about all of the facets of it. So that's really important.
You've spoken before, I think, Louise, about the importance for women to manage their brand. In other words, it's not enough to do the job, but you have to let people know you're doing it.
Correct. As I say to my team, it's not good enough in the morning to come in and throw the handbag underneath the desk and just stay at the desk all day. You've got to manage your brand. You've got to get out there. You've got to walk the floors. You've got to engage with people. And it's all about people. We in PayPal talk about all the time, technology won't change the world. People will. So it's really important to manage your brand, both internally within the organisation, but more importantly as well externally.
But maybe what makes some women reluctant to going back to the point about stereotypes is that they don't want to be seen as pushy, because it's more women will more readily be seen as pushy than men, maybe.
Correct. Well, if you talk about men, they're seen as the boss. If you talk about women, they're seen as bossy. So again, I think the most important piece is women, it's a level playing field. It's not we're trying to be anything different. It's a level playing field between men and women, and we need to make sure that we as role models are supporting women and not letting them be seen as being bossy as opposed to being the boss.
And I think what's interesting is sometimes for men, I think success and likability is positively correlated, whereas in the workplace, I think sometimes for women it can be negatively correlated. But to that point about profiling, in my experience, I think a lot of women in the workplace don't invest enough time into developing their profile. I read this interesting thing recently that when it comes to applying for a job, if a man sees a job advert and he is 60% reaching the eligibility criteria, he'll throw in a CV, whereas sometimes women are reluctant to do that. And I think in terms of moving the dial, I think improving people's profile, women's profile in work, but also I think women feeling more confident about overestimating or being confident in their own abilities, I think is instrumental.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, totally agree. I think the biggest challenge that women have is around confidence. And if you haven't got confidence in yourself to put yourself out there, to get that level of exposure, it's really, really important.
But why should women, or why would they, or why might they lack confidence, given what we see, what happens, say, at school, in university, in regard to people's readiness to apply themselves to get the exams, to get the results?
Yeah, but I think, you know what I mean, that's the beauty of the gender. I mean, just women definitely, as we just said, you know, it's around looking at the job spec and deciding you only have 60% of it. You know, women don't do that. Women look at the job spec and say, I don't have all of it, and so I won't apply. Again, I would always say, put your best foot forward, and any opportunity you should take it and grab it with both hands and see how it works out. Because if you're not in the ring, you're not certainly going to be taking part.
Do women mentor each other enough? I'm just wondering again, and this might be something of a cliche, but you get a sense, and this might tie in with the idea of people being bossy or whatever, that there's a feeling that some women, maybe they pull the ladder up behind them and don't look after their fellow females when they get ahead.
Well,
Is that fair?
Well, that's not my experience. And I think, you know, what we're doing today, we're recognising 25 women from all walks of life, from different industries who have really made an impact. And I think the value of that is by having highly visible women in senior walks of life. I think actually that's liberating for other people and for other women, so that they can see that it can be done. And I think there's a lot of debate about having to make trade-offs, but I think the reality is the workplace is changing, and I think people are working more flexibly. I think there's new flexible working tools, which means that people have better work-life balance. And so I think all of that is leading to more role models who are able to show that it can be done, and being supportive in organisations. And the WXN provides mentoring, it provides coaching, and I think that, you know, all of that helps women gain confidence in the workplace and move forward.
I see a text in from one listener on 51551. My daughter was told that she was too ambitious, so she moved to London, where ambition is seen as a good thing. I don't know, do we have a particular difficulty about ambition here, maybe?
No, I don't believe so. It's certainly not my experience. I think if you're not ambitious, I mean, it's a fabulous trait to have. It's a shame that mother felt that our daughter felt she had to move to London because we're not ambitious. I think if you're not ambitious, you're certainly that's seen as a really, really positive attribute. And everybody should be ambitious, whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. But I think, Sean, in relation to, you know, do women pull the ladder up behind them? Absolutely not, in my experience. I mean, we've a very diverse population in PayPal. We're at 50-50 in relation to the whole organisation, 60-40 at my table to women. The reality is women need to promote women. They should promote women as they should promote men. There should be no difference. But the reality is the best person should get the job.
And if I can just add to that, if you look at who's making purchasing decisions, women invariably make the majority of purchasing decisions. And I think for businesses to be successful, decision making within the organisations has to be informed by that. Businesses really have to understand women, and so I think that's really helping in terms of bringing about a change and leading to situations where organisations that they're more rich in terms of their insights into women and how they make decisions themselves, which leads to a stronger bottom line. So there's a moral and there's a social imperative to promote gender diversity, but I think equally there's an economic imperative for businesses to support more women in senior roles.
Do you favour quotas? Gender quotas.
So I have my thought is that I think in some instances you do have to have a gender quota, but they should be sunset. Very much, I'm very clear, it should be sunset.
What do you mean by that? I think I know what you mean, but you better explain it.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I think in some parts of industry we have to have quotas. I believe personally, and meaning by they need to be sunset, they should be, say, a quota for 2 years to actually get enough women back in on boards and stuff like that. Again, I think the right decision needs to be made is to have the right person sitting at the table. But ultimately, it's proven record. In Deloitte did a survey and said that when they had more diverse populations around the table, better decisions were being made. And I think that's where I'm coming from.
One thing that helps people to get ahead in business and in life generally is the whole idea of networking. Now, there are obvious ways in which men traditionally do it, whether it is through golf, that's an obvious example. What do women do to network? And other sporting outlets, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I think there's many different ways that women network. I think, you know, whether it's inside work, whether it's outside work. I mean, I'm certainly aware of so many more professional groupings that promote women, and I think it's almost becoming a little bit more acceptable or something to be celebrated that women have role models, that we have organisations like WXN, we have Women in Business, we have a range of organisations that promote women and promote networking. But I do take your point.
But women need to set up those organisations. I mean, men kind of have them there already, or at least they have the obvious networks.
And I suppose that's falling on traditional structures. And I think that's a real asset to men. I think it opens doors. I think as women, we have to drive that as well. And we have to be role models to really promote that kind of networking and those support structures so that younger women who are coming up are actually able to avail of that and benefit from that.
Louise, Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook's chief operating officer, has often been in the news, not recently because of her bereavement with the loss of her husband, but she's been outspoken in the past about women in business leadership, and among the things she's been observing or complaining about, that she is always asked, how do you do it all, and about what kind of childcare she gets for her children, or other questions about her family life, while men in similar positions are never asked questions like that.
Yeah, but I think the reality is this again. It's back to what culturally has been happening over the last hundreds and decades. And the reality is, I think not everybody can have it all. Whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, there's trade-offs you have to make, and the trade-offs have to be made. Whether it's work-life balance or whether it's your personal life, we all make those trade-offs. Whether you're a man or woman, every single day. And the reality is, it's how you manage those trade-offs. I mean, I don't expect anyone to manage my work-life balance. That's my responsibility, and I'm very happy to manage it, and I think my organisation is very happy to let me manage it, because at the end of the day they can't influence where I am or what I do.
But is it something that is seen as something that women have to manage, whereas men kind of can assume it's going to be done for them?
I don't really agree. I know in my organisation, as I said, we 50-50 in PayPal. The reality is I have leaders and managers that drop their children to creches and all those things, as well as women do. I think again that is out there, and I think it's previously from long time back. I just think men and women are getting a lot more balanced in relation to the decisions making that's happening, and balancing out how they share the responsibilities of children.
But also, what does having it all mean? I think what's important is to be clear in terms of what your priorities are, and I think respecting people that make different decisions and take different paths in life, I think is really important in that sense as well.
In her book, Sheryl Sandberg, the book Lean In, I should say, she says too many women take their foot off the gas during their career by selling themselves short and pulling back too early from career progression. Would you agree with that, Christine?
Well, I mean, the stats do bear that out. I mean, the reality is we have 10% of female participation at board level in Ireland. We've less than 20% female TDs in the Dáil. So there clearly is an issue, and I think women primarily do bear the brunt of work in the home. That still is a reality today, and that creates additional pressures for females in the workplace. I think it's changing. I think it's encouraging that more than 50% of our graduates today are female, and I think as well we've mentioned how the workplace is changing. It's becoming more flexible, but looking at the millennial generation, in 10 years' time, this generation, the millennials, will make up the majority of the workforce. And I think they have different expectations in terms of what they want from an employer. They want flexibility, they want collaboration, they want greater diversity. So, I do think that there is real momentum there in terms of those changes.
Yeah, the woman whose daughter, and we read the text from her, who had gone to London because she was told she was too ambitious. That woman has texted again. She says it was her boss who told her. He told her to chill. Now, another caller, Paul, says we need to get rid of the word boss. It's a hangover from the bad old days of authoritative management. Managers should lead, they should motivate and support. I would never call my manager my boss. We're not living in an episode of Mad Men anymore. What do you think?
Well, fair play to you, Paul. You're absolutely right. We're not living in a society of mad men. I think you're right. It's all about leadership. It's all about accountability. And I think that's what the future is. I mean, leadership is what we all do.
Can these things be learned? I mean, I would imagine that you, Louise, particularly would have had a certain amount going for you. Given I think that you're one of 17 children, that was possibly where you first learned people skills.
Correct. Well, 9 girls and 8 boys. I certainly learned it very, very early.
Where did you come?
I'm second youngest. So very diverse slate in our house, so there was no difference whether what role you played. Everybody had to play a role, and I think at the end of the day it's about inclusion. It's less about the gender, it's more about inclusion, and I think it's about diversity of thought at any table, and it is all about leadership. It's about motivation.
Yeah, but see, those are words, inclusion, leadership, motivation, but and you can say, you could put the word inspire in there as well, Christine. But how do you go about, how do you set us about inspiring people?
Well, I think you do that by role modeling certain behaviours, by showing that, you know, by being a woman in business, you can input, you can have a voice, and I think that's critical. And Louise is talking about the difference between diversity and inclusion. I think it's important to have women at the top table, but women have to have a voice when they're at that top table, and I think that's where the real value comes. And I think by other people seeing that and seeing the value of that, I think that's how we break down those barriers.
But is it something that you do working at a group level, or do you do it with individuals one-to-one, Louise?
So I would say you do it in both of those examples. You do it with individuals and you do it in group sessions as well. I mean, again, it's about coaching and mentoring. It's about role modelling. It's absolutely about how you role model yourself, because you're being observed all the time as a leader in an organisation. And it's about how you mentor and coach people, whether that's giving feedback, whether that's in a group situation where you're training somebody around the skills and competencies. It's really, really important, I think, that we role models, that we are, certainly as a result of what's happening today with WXN having the top 25 most powerful women being awarded tonight, I think it's really important that we set the standard so that people can see there is a role model opportunity in somebody. And I think it's really important that we are making sure that we're promoting women. Obviously, we're always promoting men as well. It's the best person to get the job. But the most important thing is you have to have a voice at the table to make sure you have a diversity of thought.
A couple of questions that have come through on the system, I suppose very practical ones. What about leaving the office at 5? Is that important, Christine?
Well, I think work-life balance is important, and I think to be a good employer and to get the very best from people, which I think, you know, is critical. I think you have to support them in the widest sense. My experience, I mean, I mentioned to you how diverse Tesco is, but we have very flexible ways of working, and I think what that means is that, you know, if you have a commitment outside of work, you know, ultimately you give back, and so I think actually having that flexibility does get the best out of people.
And Louise, people as well looking for tips for stress release. How, you know, has it to do with not working after hours or shutting down work matters and giving yourself time away?
Yeah, I mean, everybody needs a break from the job. And again, because of the way the world is moving around the internet, around conference calls, around, you're accessible all the time. But the reality is you have to be able to stand back and take time out for you and do whatever your activity is. So mine is, you know, 6:15 in the morning and I do my run or my gym. That's my time, and that's precious. But I think you have to set yourself up for success to balance your work with your personal life. And that should involve making sure you do that. The idea of leaving the office at 5 o'clock is irrelevant to me. It's not about visibility, it's about accountability. And you shouldn't have to be seen to be leaving or coming into the office at 5 o'clock. It's irrelevant. It's about accountability. And I think that's what we focus on in PayPal, is around how do we set up people to be successful, whatever hours that suit them. We want to make sure that we support them. Everybody has to be supportive within the organisation, and being seen at 5 o'clock leaving or coming in is irrelevant. It's about accountability.
I suppose your parting shots then, your parting thoughts for people, and they will be listening to you and I suppose admiring your achievements and aspiring to reach the same levels of success. What are the thoughts that you would offer to people who say, might buttonhole you this evening and say, come on, Christine, I just need one or two ideas or one or two thoughts that really worked for you?
I think find your own voice. I think be impactful, communicate with impact, and never leave a room without putting up your hand. I think if you have a perspective, always put it on a table. I think that will be a key piece of advice I'd give. And I think secondly, in terms of making career decisions, you don't need to have a master plan, but I think it's really important that the decisions you make and the roles that you take on appeal to your interests, because we invest so much in our professional lives. I think you know it's really important that we work in areas that matter to us, where we feel that we are making a difference. So that's my advice. I wouldn't
dream of putting words in your mouth, Louise, but I would imagine one of your thoughts would be, don't be afraid to change course.
Absolutely. I changed course. I started out nursing and look where I am today, completely different. I would always say, be true to yourself. Be true to yourself and always have an advocate of you. Somebody that has an interest in you, whether it's a family member, whether it's a sister or a brother, an aunt and uncle. Always have somebody be an advocate of you. I think it's really, really important. And certainly we promote that within PayPal, as well as we're also promoting that I'm hiring people as well. So I just want to make sure I get that in as well. Sean, we have 50 roles open. So anyone looking for a job, and certainly we'll have...
Male or female, I trust.
Male or female, we're gender balance. We really are looking for people to give them a great career, not just a job.
what are the vacancies that you have at the moment?
I
Just as
have
matter of
a
interest.
number of vacancies. I have 50 vacancies to be filled between now and the end of the year. Customer services, merchant services, business, lots of opportunities. So certainly anybody is very welcome to join
You're welcome
PayPal.
to the free ad. Louise
Thanks very
Phelan,
much, Sean.
Thank you very much. Vice President of Global Operations at PayPal, and Christine Heffernan, Corporate Affairs Director with Tesco Ireland. Thank you both for coming in.
Today with Sean O'Rourke on RTE Radio 1.
Tweet at Today SOR.
And we've had lots of texts as well about women in business and women leading in business. Anya in Offaly says, I met Louise Phelan a couple of years ago on a flight to Heathrow. I was making the long haul trip to China. She took me with her to the business lounge in Heathrow, a lovely lady. And if there were more women like that in business, we would be doing very well. Thank you for that. Keep those texts coming to 51551.